The best bias is deeply hidden. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently one of you challenged a video that I posted about the commissioning sources of general officers. That video had an eye towards the question of, is the general officer selection process biased in favor of West Point graduates? What some of you said was that the data and the analysis really wasn't, conclusive enough. Or, as one person said, so, no idea, huh? But I suggest that that is exactly the way they want things to be. The powers that be want to present an unbiased appearance while gently pulling the strings underneath the table. They want to bump the pinball machine without tilting it. To see what I mean, let's just quickly summarize the video on commissioning sources. The bottom line is that about 33% of all regular Army general officers graduated from West Point. But if you go back to the late 90s, when most of these generals were just starting out as second lieutenants, well, back then, West Pointers only represented something like 21% of the commissioned officers. But does that mean that there's a bias for West Point officers at the General Officer Selection Board? After you take into consideration the fact that Academy grads are more likely to stick around for a full career of service, and that they tend to start their careers in the combat arms, and never mind the fact that their mentors and their network is more likely to point them in the right direction, well, it's probably less about a selection bias at the board and more the result of accumulated advantages across their career. It's a bit like what Malcolm Gladwell describes in his book, Outliers. But so what? Well, it's helpful to remember that people in positions of power want to exercise that power by distributing rewards and favors. They want to surround themselves with people that they can trust and that they can control. And that means that they want to behave in a very biased manner. But they don't want to be too obvious about it. I'll give you a crazy example. Years and years ago, a couple buddies of mine and I worked on an analysis to determine what factors influenced the selection to colonel. We looked at a ridiculous number of factors and applied a whole slew of statistical models, but what we came up with was a surprisingly simple observation. Getting top-notch lieutenant colonel OERs was the most important factor. Granted, it's one of these, no kidding kind of observations, but it had a huge impact on how we counseled people as they passed through their career. Deliver results that are important to your senior rater, take every lieutenant colonel job seriously, get any grad school done as a major so you can use those 4 or 5 years as a lieutenant colonel to be laser focused on, top-notch evaluations. But that is not the crazy part. The crazy part is what happened when we showed these results to human resource professionals. They unanimously wanted that finding buried. And as one of these HR people put it, well, if we tell people what the recipe is, then everybody will just be following the recipe. And I gotta be honest, I didn't understand the logic at the time, and I've never really gotten my head wrapped around why you wouldn't want to tell people, hey, the recipe is do a good job. Now, go do a good job. But I think it comes back to that comment about the commissioning sources, where somebody said, so, no idea? Well, that and my suspicion that the powers that be want to present a very egalitarian and merit-based system while being able to influence things gently behind the scenes. And even if there is absolutely no backroom dealing, this has an important implication for you. You have to proceed as if the system has no bias. You have to accumulate all those little advantages over the course of your career. You have to deliver the results that your senior raters value. Because the fact of the matter is that second lieutenant who gets lost in the woods, the one who consistently screws up operational assignments, and then when he gets sent off to the staff, he just bungles that too. No amount of connections is going to save that guy's career. And at the same time, you have to accept that from time to time, you're going to see people who seem to have been promoted beyond their skill level. The company owner's son is just going to get put into a position simply because he is the owner's son. In the military, this kind of favoritism or bias is going to be carefully disguised. And, not for nothing, the Peter Principle is going to quickly disillusion anybody who doesn't live up to expectations. And if you want to see more about how the Peter Principle works in the military setting, watch one of these videos.